I'm Wren Ashford. I'm 31 years old. And 4 weeks ago, at my father's retirement gala, he said something in front of 240 guests that made me decide to disappear from this family for good. Picture it. A restored ballroom inside our family's flagship inn on the Savannah waterfront, string lights, an open bar, silk dresses, and pressed linen suits everywhere you looked. My father stood at the podium, tapping his champagne flute for quiet, introducing his family one at a time like prize horses at an auction. When he got to me, he wore that smile I'd seen 10,000 times, warm to a room full of strangers, sharp as a blade to me. "And this is my daughter, Wren," he said. "No real career to speak of. Mostly just lives off the family name." 240 people laughed, that easy, comfortable laugh people give when cruelty is dressed up as a joke. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I lifted my glass, smiled back at him, and said, "Congratulations on the retirement, Dad. This is the last time any of you will see me." Then I set the glass down, untouched, and walked out through the terrace doors. The room went dead silent behind me. What happened after that is the story I'm here to tell you. Before I go on, like and subscribe, but only if you actually want to know how this ends. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now. Let me take you back 13 years, to the day my future got decided for me without my permission. The Ashfords of Savannah. That's how people knew us, old coastal money dressed up as new hospitality royalty. My father, Wren Ashford, built Ashford Hospitality Group from a single restored inn on Jones Street into a small chain of 11 boutique properties strung along the Georgia and South Carolina coast. We had a restored Greek Revival house on Whitaker Street, a boat slip at the Yacht Club, and a name that opened every door in town. From the outside, we looked like something out of a magazine spread. My mother died in a car accident when I was 7. I don't remember much about her voice anymore, but I remember her hands braiding my hair on the porch swing, unhurried, like there was nowhere else in the world she needed to be. 3 years later, my father married Vivian. She came with a son from her first marriage, Grant, 2 years older than me. Within a year, they weren't just part of the household. They were the household. I became something like furniture, not through cruelty exactly, just through absence. Grant got praised for every B+ like it was a Rhodes Scholarship. Mine went unmentioned. Grant got a new Land Rover at 17. I got the old Camry with the broken air conditioning. Grant was the future of Ashford hospitality. I was just also there. My father never raised his voice at me. He simply looked past me, the way you look past a window when you're trying to see the street beyond it. But one person always looked directly at me. My grandmother, Constance Ashford, my father's mother, the woman who'd opened that very first inn on Jones Street back in 1971 with a card table, a rotary phone, and 4 rooms to rent. She called me every Sunday evening without fail, asked about my classes, my plans, the small, ordinary things nobody else in that house ever asked about. "You remind me of myself at your age, Wren," she told me once. Underestimated by everyone in the room except the one person who mattered. She left me something when she died. Something nobody in my family knew existed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In that house, I learned early how to make myself small enough to be overlooked. What I didn't understand yet was that being overlooked would someday become my greatest advantage. I was 22, 3 semesters into a graduate program in hospitality finance at Cornell, when my father called me home for what he called a family meeting. Those 2 words had never once meant anything good in our house. I found him in his study, mahogany desk, framed magazine covers on the wall, the smell of cedar and old money. Vivian stood behind his chair, one hand on his shoulder, a united front. "Wren," my father began, not looking up from his ledger. "We have to make some sacrifices as a family this year. Grant's been accepted into the hotel management program at Cornell's undergrad school. It's a real opportunity for the company's future. My pulse didn't even spike. I already knew where this was headed. We can't fund both your master's and his tuition right now, he continued. So we've decided you'll take a pause from your program. Just for now. Grant's path benefits the whole business. Vivian added, honey dripping from every syllable, a woman doesn't need a master's degree to have a good life, Wren. You'll figure something out. You always do. I sat there frozen, not from shock. 13 years of training had already burned shock out of me, but because some small, stupid part of me had still been hoping. You told me you'd cover my program, I said quietly. You promised Mom you'd make sure I finished school. His jaw tightened. Circumstances change. Once the business stabilizes, I'll make it up to you. He never did. I found out years later, through a cousin who'd had one drink too many at a wedding, that there had been plenty of money that year. They'd simply chosen not to spend it on me. I didn't argue that afternoon. I nodded, gathered my things, and left. But somewhere on the drive back to campus, I made myself a promise. This would be the last time anyone else got to decide what I was worth. I moved to Charleston with $2,200 in savings and 2 suitcases that didn't match the life I'd left behind. My first apartment was a converted attic above a dry cleaner's on King Street, 400 square feet, a window unit that groaned all night, walls thin enough to hear my downstairs neighbor's television through the floorboards. I ate grits and eggs for dinner some nights, day-old bread from the bakery where I worked mornings before my real job. But there's something about hitting bottom, you can't fall any further from there. I took a front desk position at a small independent inn on the peninsula, minimum wage, tips, and a manager named Odell Marsh who saw something in me nobody in my own family ever had. You've got a mind for this business, Wren, he told me one slow Tuesday afternoon. Nobody's ever going to hand that to you. You've got to build it yourself. So I did. I picked up every extra shift. I learned the reservation system inside and out, then the revenue management software, then how occupancy and rate and seasonality all fit together like a puzzle nobody else on staff had bothered to solve. I took free online courses at night, hospitality finance, yield management, operations theory, on my own time, on my own dime. I didn't call home. I didn't ask for a single dollar. When my father's assistant mailed me a birthday card with a $50 check tucked inside 1 year, I tore it in half and threw it in the trash without a second thought. 5 years after I left Savannah, I'd saved enough to launch my own consulting practice. Harbor and Stone Hospitality Advisors. Just me, a laptop, and a rented desk in a co-working space 2 blocks from the Battery. I kept my name off everything public-facing. No headshots, no press, no LinkedIn profile with my picture attached. Every contract went through the company name and my attorney. Why the secrecy? Because I knew exactly what my family would do if they found out I was succeeding. They'd either try to take credit for it or find a way to tear it down. Some people build empires to prove something to the world. I built mine in total silence, because silence was the only language that house had ever fully taught me. My grandmother Constance died 2 years ago, when I'd just turned 29. I flew back to Savannah for the funeral, sat in a pew near the back, and listened to my father deliver a eulogy about a remarkable woman devoted entirely to family. The irony sat so thick in my throat I nearly choked on it. At the reception afterward, I kept to myself. Nobody seemed to register that I was even in the room, which was exactly how I wanted it. 3 days later, I got a call from a lawyer I'd never spoken to, Priscilla Adeyemi, from a small estate firm downtown. Ms. Ashford, I represent your grandmother's separate estate. She established a trust in your name 9 years ago, with explicit instructions that no other family member be informed of its existence. I nearly dropped the phone. The trust held $650,000. She also left you a letter, Priscilla said. Would you like me to read it now? I said yes, though my voice didn't sound entirely like my own. My dearest Wren, Priscilla read. I know what they did to you. The program at Cornell, the promises, all of it. I fought your father on this until I ran out of words. He never listens to anyone who isn't useful to him. This money is yours, no conditions attached. Use it to build the life they tried to take away from you. Remember what I've always told you. Don't let anyone convince you you're not worth investing in. By the time they finally understand your worth, it will already be too late for them to matter. I believe in you. I always have. All my love, Grandma Constance. I used part of that money to expand Harbor and Stone. The rest I kept quietly, as insurance for a day I hoped would never come, but somewhere underneath, always suspected it eventually would. That day came 4 weeks ago. Let me tell you what Harbor and Stone Hospitality Advisors looks like today. 18 employees. Just under $5 million in annual revenue. An office on East Bay Street with a harbor view that makes people take you seriously before you've said a single word. I wear a modest gold watch now, not to impress anyone, but because I bought it myself, $1 at a time, with money nobody in my family ever touched. We specialize in revenue management and operations consulting for independent boutique hotels, the unglamorous, deeply profitable work of figuring out exactly what a room should cost on a Tuesday in March versus a Saturday during the Savannah Music Festival. It isn't flashy. It's extremely lucrative, and I happen to be very good at it. Here's the part that would be almost funny if it weren't so painfully ironic. One of our largest and longest-running clients is Ashford Hospitality Group. My father's company. They signed a 4-year revenue management contract with Harbor and Stone 3 years ago. We handle dynamic pricing, channel strategy, and forecasting across all 11 of his properties. Our work accounts for close to a third of their annual net operating income in pure margin improvement. My father has absolutely no idea. Every communication runs through my operations director, Marcus Whitfield, and every contract carries his signature, never mine. The handful of times Wren Ashford has bragged at industry mixers about the sharp young consulting shop that turned his portfolio around, he's been bragging about his own daughter's work. The same daughter he introduced to 240 people as someone with no real career. 4 weeks ago, a goldfoil invitation arrived at my office. Wren Ashford requests the honor of your presence. I almost threw it straight into the recycling bin. Almost. But then I thought about Grandma Constance, about 13 years of silence, about every broken promise and every door quietly shut in my face. I RSVP'd yes, not because I wanted reconciliation, not because some part of me still hoped things had changed, but because I knew with absolute certainty that my father would do something unforgivable that night, and I wanted to be standing there when he did it, so I could finally close the door on my own terms. I just didn't know how right that prediction would turn out to be. The Ashford Inn on the waterfront hadn't changed in 30 years. Same restored tabby brick, same overpriced valet, same crowd of old coastal money mixing uneasily with new development money that hadn't learned the local customs yet. I wore a deep green silk dress, simple, expensive, my grandmother's garnet earrings, and a watch I'd bought with my own first 6-figure year. Everything on me, I'd earned myself, and that mattered more to me than any label ever could. Vivian intercepted me at the entrance. She'd aged, but her smile hadn't, that same practiced warmth stretched over something considerably colder underneath. Wren. You actually came. Her tone made it sound like both a pleasant surprise and a minor inconvenience. Your father wasn't sure you'd have anything appropriate to wear. How thoughtful of him to worry, I said, and walked past her into the ballroom. 240 guests moved beneath restored crystal chandeliers, developers, bankers, Chamber of Commerce types, a state senator I recognized from a fundraiser years ago. I knew some of the faces from my father's old dinner parties. Not one of them recognized me. Grant swept past with a woman on his arm I didn't recognize, deep in conversation about his vision for the company's digital future, never once glancing my direction. Classic Grant. All confidence, very little substance underneath it. I found my seat assignment. Table 17, tucked near the kitchen service door, seated with distant family friends I'd never actually met. Not the family table. Not even close. I wasn't surprised. I noted it anyway. A server offered me champagne. I took a glass. Across the room, my father caught my eye, gave a single nod, a dismissal disguised as acknowledgement, then turned back to his real guests. The evening was only beginning, and I had a front row seat to my own family's contempt. I've learned over the years that the best information comes from staying quiet and keeping your ears open. That ballroom's acoustics carried conversation far better than anyone realized. My father held court near the bar, surrounded by industry men in expensive blazers. Harbour and Stone's been transformative for our portfolio, he was saying to a silver-haired man I recognized as a regional developer. Whoever's running that shop is a genius. I've never even met them. Private operation, the other man said. I've tried for months to get a meeting. Any idea who's behind it? My father shrugged. Everything goes through their legal team and account managers. Honestly, I don't care who they are as long as they keep delivering the numbers. I took a slow sip of champagne to hide my smile. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Renewal docs from Ashford came in today. Board wants another 4 years, plus a scope expansion. Waiting on your call. I typed back, I'll have an answer by end of week. What my father didn't know, what nobody in that ballroom knew, was that Harbour and Stone's contract with Ashford Hospitality was up for renewal that same quarter. If we walked, they'd lose nearly a third of their operating margin within 2 fiscal quarters. In independent hospitality, that's not an inconvenience. That's a slow-motion collapse. At the bar for a refill, I ran straight into the extended family reception committee. Aunt Deborah, Vivian's older sister, spotted me first, her face cycling through surprise, pity, and condescension in about half a second. Wren, sweetheart, I almost didn't recognize you. Still up in Charleston doing your little consulting thing? Hospitality advisory, I said. Oh, how nice. She said it the way you'd say it about someone's hobby with scented candles. Seeing anyone? Your father mentioned you're still single. 31, isn't it? Time really does fly. Before I could answer, Uncle Preston chimed in. Harlan says you're still finding your footing. Nothing wrong with a late bloomer. Not everyone's cut out for traditional success. I understood, with cold clarity, exactly what had happened. My father had briefed them ahead of time, handed out talking points about the family disappointment, written the narrative before I'd even walked through the door. He mentioned you had some difficult years after you left the program, Deborah added, lowering her voice conspiratorially. So brave of you to even show up tonight. My grip tightened on the champagne glass, not from hurt, I was long past that, but from the sheer audacity of it. I appreciate the concern, I said evenly, but I'm doing better than I've ever been in my life. They exchanged a look, the kind that says poor thing doesn't even realize how far she's fallen. I excused myself before I said something I couldn't take back. Grant found me out on the terrace, looking over the marsh grass toward the water. Well, he said behind me, dripping with contempt. The prodigal daughter. I didn't turn around. Grant. He stepped up beside me, close enough that I caught his cologne, a gift from our father, no doubt. Dad's about to give his speech. Wanted to make sure you weren't planning some kind of scene. Why would I do that? Because you've always been jealous, he said, like it was established fact. The way you disappeared after the program thing. You've never gotten over it. I turned to face my stepbrother in his tailored suit, his watch worth more than my first car. Is that what helps you sleep at night? His eyes hardened. I heard you started some kind of little company. Down there. Playing businesswoman. He laughed, short and cruel. How long until it folds? A year? Then you'll come crawling back begging Dad for a job. I won't. You will. You always do. You're not built for this, Wren. You never were. I could have told him right then about Harbour and Stone, about the contract, about how his precious company's recovery had been built entirely on the work of the sister he'd just dismissed. I didn't. Some truths need the right stage. Believe whatever helps you feel better, Grant, I said, and walked past him back inside. But I promise you this. After tonight, you're going to wish you'd treated me differently. His laugh followed me through the doors, dismissive, sure of itself. He had no idea what was coming. None of them did. The lights dimmed. A spotlight found the podium. My father climbed the steps to thunderous applause, the conquering hero of coastal hospitality, taking his final bow. 35 years in this business, he said, voice carrying that practiced warmth he'd perfected over decades. It's been one hell of a ride. Laughter. More applause. He thanked partners, staff, mentors, luck, everyone but the people who'd actually made the last 3 years profitable. Then came the family segment. None of this would have been possible without my incredible wife, Vivian. Applause. Vivian dabbed at her eyes right on cue. And my son Grant, who'll be taking over as chief executive come spring. A standing ovation. Grant rose, waved, the picture of corporate royalty. Then my father's eyes found me, and something shifted in his expression, something mean. And of course, my daughter Wren. The spotlight swung toward my table. 240 pairs of eyes turned with it. No real career to speak of. Mostly just lives off the family name. A pause for comedic effect. But hey, at least she showed up tonight. The room erupted into real laughter, the kind that comes from people who think they're in on a joke, never realizing they're watching cruelty dressed up as comedy. I sat perfectly still. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I waited for the laughter to fade completely, and then I stood up. The room went quiet as I rose. I could feel every eye on me, some curious, some pitying, some already bracing to watch a breakdown, the unstable daughter finally cracking under her father's harmless little joke. I picked up my champagne glass, slowly, deliberately. My father's smile faltered, just barely. He hadn't expected me to react at all. I was supposed to sit there and absorb it the way I always had. I raised the glass toward him. Congratulations on the retirement, Dad. My voice was clear, steady, loud enough for every microphone in that room to catch. 35 years. Quite a run. I paused. You taught me a great deal about hard work, about sacrifice, and about exactly what kind of loyalty this family is capable of. The silence was absolute now. I could hear ice shift in someone's glass 3 tables away. So here's to you. I lifted the glass higher. This is the last time any of you will see me. I set the glass down, untouched, picked up my bag, and walked toward the terrace doors. My heels clicked against the reclaimed heart-pine floor, the only sound in that entire cavernous room. I didn't run. I didn't hurry. spine straight, head level. Behind me, silence, complete, total, devastating silence. The daughter who was supposed to be broken had just walked out on her own terms. I want to pause the story right here. If any part of this feels familiar to you, if you've ever sat at a family table while someone made you into the evening's punchline, comment the word boundary below. I want to know I'm not the only one who's lived through something like this. And if you want to know what my father discovered in the weeks that followed, stay with me, because the next part changes everything. I pushed through the terrace doors into the night air, and for the first time in 13 years, I could actually breathe. I was nearly to my car when I heard footsteps behind me. Wren. Wren, stop right there. Vivian's voice, sharp and furious. I kept walking. Do you have any idea what you just did? You humiliated your father in front of everyone in this town. I looked at her hand once it landed on my arm until she removed it herself. I humiliated him? I think you have that backwards. My father appeared behind her, his face a thundercloud, aware, I'm sure, that plenty of guests were watching from the terrace windows. Get back inside, he said, low and dangerous. Apologize. Now. No. The word hung between us in the salt air. This isn't a negotiation, Wren. I'm your father. You're telling me what, exactly? That I should go back in there and keep smiling while you tell 200 people I'm worthless? It was a joke. It was the truth of how you've always seen me. And I'm done pretending otherwise. I opened my car door. My father stepped forward. If you leave right now, you're done. No more family, no more anything. I almost laughed. Dad, you cut me off 13 years ago. You just never had the nerve to say it out loud. Tonight, I'm saying it for both of us. I started the engine and drove away. I pulled into a gas station about 20 minutes outside Savannah and sat there with the engine idling, hands still on the wheel, just breathing. The morning after the gala, I woke up in my Charleston apartment feeling lighter than I had in over a decade. But I knew it wasn't over. Families like mine don't let go that easily. They'd try to manage the narrative, spin the story, cast me as the villain. What they didn't know was that I had something they couldn't spin their way around. It started with text messages, not from my father, he was too proud for that, but from cousins, aunts, family friends I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly deeply concerned about my mental state. Wren, heard about the gala. Your dad says you're going through something. Deborah told me you had some kind of episode. We're all worried about you, sweetie. Your father loves you, he just wants what's best. The narrative was already being written. Poor unstable Wren, jealous, had some kind of breakdown at the party. Wren Ashford, patient, loving father, doing his best with a difficult daughter. I didn't respond to a single one. Then came the more interesting call. My phone rang Tuesday afternoon, a Savannah number I didn't recognize. I answered anyway. Ms. Ashford, this is James Colby. I'm a board member at Ashford Hospitality Group. I'm calling on behalf of your father. He'd like to discuss mending fences. Really? Between us, there's been some concerning chatter about your possible connection to one of our vendors. Probably nothing, but Harlan thought it worth clearing the air. I went cold. What kind of chatter? Something about our consulting partner, Harbor and Stone. Someone thought they'd seen you at their offices once. I'm sure it's nothing. My mind raced. Who? When? I'm not sure what you're referring to, I said, keeping my voice neutral, but please tell my father I have nothing left to discuss with him. I hung up. They were getting close, closer than I'd realized. It was time to stop waiting and start acting. While I fielded concerned texts in Charleston, my father was facing a very different kind of crisis back in Savannah. I learned the details much later, secondhand, from people who'd been in the room. Wren Ashford walked into what should have been a routine quarterly review. Instead, his CFO looked like he'd seen a ghost. "We have a problem with Harbor and Stone," the CFO said, sliding a folder across the table. "Their contract's up for renewal in 5 months. They haven't responded to our extension offer. So send another offer. Sweeten the terms. We've tried 3 times. Their legal team just says under review. We've tried calling their leadership directly. And? Sir, it's an extremely private operation. Nobody meets with ownership. Everything's virtual, legal representatives, account managers." A long silence. "If they walk," the CFO continued, "we lose close to a third of our operating margin within 2 quarters. Replacing that kind of pricing infrastructure would take at least 18 months, and that's the optimistic estimate." My father's jaw tightened. "I want a name by the end of the week." What he didn't yet know, what he was about to discover, was that the name he was hunting for had been sitting on his own family tree the entire time. Thursday evening, my phone rang. "Vivian." I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. "Wren, sweetheart. Honey and sugar, the performance of a lifetime. I've been so worried about you." "Have you?" "Of course. That's what family does." She laughed softly, like we shared some private joke. "About the gala, your father feels terrible. He didn't mean what he said. You know how he gets when he's nervous, trying to be funny. He said I had no real career in front of 240 people. He exaggerates when he's anxious. You know that." A brief recalibration. "Why don't you come home this weekend? Dinner, just the 4 of us. Clear the air." I could picture her rehearsing this call, choosing exactly which buttons to push. "Does Dad want to apologize?" I asked. A hesitation. "He wants to move forward. Isn't that what matters? So, no apology. Wren, don't be difficult. We're trying to help you." "Help me? Now?" I laughed once, short. "Vivian, you spent 21 years making sure I understood I wasn't really part of this family. Now you're calling to help me. Why?" Another pause, longer this time. "I think we both know there's more going on here than family drama," she said, her warmth dropping away entirely. "Whatever you're planning, and I know you're planning something, it would be better for everyone if you just came home and talked it through." "No." I hung up before she could answer. They knew something. They just didn't yet know how much to be afraid of. The next morning I drove to Priscilla Adeyemi's office downtown, glass and steel, harbor views, the kind of place where serious business quietly gets done. "I've been expecting you," she said when I walked in. "This is about Ashford Hospitality. They're trying to find out who owns Harbor and Stone." She nodded, unsurprised. "Your anonymity was always going to be temporary. The only real question is how you want this to unfold." She spread documents across her desk, the consulting contract, every clause, every renewal term, every exit provision, the trust documents, the corporate filings. "Standard 60-day termination notice," she said, tapping the relevant clause. "You can end the agreement for any reason. No penalties, no exposure. And your grandmother's trust is entirely separate from the Ashford family estate. Legally unimpeachable. Harlan has no claim to any of it, even if he tried." She looked at me over her glasses. Constance made absolutely sure of that. I stared at the papers, everything in order, every provision airtight. "What did she say when she set this up?" Priscilla smiled, a little sadly. She said, "One day Wren is going to need leverage. When that day comes, I want her to already have it." I felt my eyes sting. Grandma Constance, protecting me even from the grave. She also said something else, Priscilla added. "Tell her not to be cruel about it. Just be honest. Sometimes the truth is punishment enough." I nodded. The truth, then. That afternoon I sat down with Marcus Whitfield in our conference room. Marcus had been with me since year 2. He knew everything, my family, Ashford hospitality, why my name never appeared on paper. "They want to renew," he said, scrolling through his tablet. 5 more years, 12% increase on top of it. "They're nervous." "They should be." I pulled up the projections on the conference screen. Numbers don't lie, and these told a brutal story. If we walked, Ashford Hospitality would lose close to a third of its operating margin within 2 fiscal quarters. In independent hospitality, that's not a dip. That's freefall. "Grant just took over as incoming CEO," Marcus said. "If this hits on his watch, his reputation's finished before it starts." We sat with that for a moment. It felt strange, holding this much leverage over people who'd spent my entire life making me feel like I had none. "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked. I'd been turning it over for days, Grandma Constance's words, revenge versus truth, the kind of person I actually wanted to be. "Draft the termination letter," I said finally. 60-day notice, per contract. No accusations, just business. Reason? Strategic repositioning. That's all they officially need to know. I paused. But I'm also writing a personal letter to my father. Separate envelope. He deserves to know exactly who he's been depending on, and exactly why that's ending. Marcus nodded. "When do you want it sent?" "Monday morning." No more waiting. I spent that entire Sunday writing the personal letter. Marcus handled the official notice, the clean legal language, the clinical explanation that would live in the file. I wrote the truth. I went through 6 drafts. The first was too angry, pages of every hurt catalogued and condemned. The second too cold. The third too desperate. The final version was simple, clean, and factual. "Dear Dad, you told a room of 240 people I had no real career, that I lived off the family name. I want you to know something. The consulting firm your business depends on, Harbor and Stone Hospitality Advisors, is mine. I built it. I own every share of it. For 3 years, the daughter you dismissed has been quietly responsible for a third of your company's profit margin. I'm ending our contract, not out of revenge, but as a boundary. Grandma Constance left me a trust you never knew existed. She saw what you never could, that I was worth investing in. Everything I have, I built myself, with her faith and without your support. I don't need an apology. I don't need you to understand any of this. I only need you to know that I was never what you said I was. I never once was. Please don't contact me again. Wren Constance Ashford." I'd added my grandmother's name as my own middle name 3 years earlier, quietly, in her honor. I included a photocopy of the incorporation papers, my name clearly listed as sole owner. I read the letter 3 times, checking for typos, checking for excessive emotion, and found none. Just the truth. Sometimes that's the most devastating weapon there is. Monday, 9 a.m. courier confirmation. The package had arrived at Ashford Hospitality's corporate office. Someone named Patricia Voss had signed for it, my father's longtime executive assistant. I remembered her from childhood birthday parties. I sat at my desk, watching my phone. 10:11 a.m. missed call from Wren Ashford. 10:19 a.m. missed call from Wren Ashford. 10:26 a.m. missed call from Grant. 10:40 a.m. missed call from Vivian. 10:52 a.m. missed call from Wren Ashford. 11:08 a.m. text from Harlan. Call me now. 11:19 a.m. text from Grant. What the hell is this? Call us. 11:36 a.m. text from Vivian. Wren, this isn't funny, pick up. By noon I had 11 missed calls, 7 texts, and 2 voicemails I didn't bother listening to. I'd waited 13 years for that moment. They could wait a few more hours. At 2 p.m. my assistant knocked. Ms. Ashford, there's a family in the lobby saying they need to see you immediately. They'd driven all the way to Charleston. 4 hours of highway and panic just to confront me in person. I checked my reflection, straightened my blazer. Send them to conference room B. I'll be down in 5 minutes. Time to be honest. Conference room B had glass walls, chosen deliberately. My 18 employees could see inside, though not hear anything. Witnesses, not to humiliate anyone, but to keep the meeting civil. Harlan, Vivian, and Grant stood clustered near the harbor-facing window, taking in a view of my company they'd never expected to see from this side of the glass. My father turned when I walked in. His face looked gray, older than I'd ever seen it. Wren. His voice cracked on my name. What is this? Hello, Dad. Vivian. Grant. I took the seat at the head of the table, calm, professional. I assume you got my letter. Your letter? Grant stepped forward, jabbing a finger toward me. You can't just, this isn't, sit down, Grant. My voice stayed quiet but firm. I won't discuss anything while you're yelling across a conference table. He looked at my father, uncertain. Harlan gave a sharp nod. They sat. For a long moment nobody spoke. Finally my father leaned forward. This is some kind of misunderstanding. Which part? Harbor and Stone. A company like that, you couldn't possibly, you didn't, I did. I slid a folder across the table, incorporation papers, tax filings, the client roster. 3 years ago your company signed a contract with mine. You've praised my work at industry events for years. You just didn't know you were praising me. Vivian's face went pale. But you don't have you were just a what, Vivian? A disappointment? A failure? I shook my head. I was a 22-year-old who got told to sacrifice her future for her stepbrothers. I built something anyway. Silence. My father stared at the papers like they might combust if he looked at them hard enough. Okay. His voice strained, the corporate composure finally cracking. I apologize. About the gala. Is that what you want? I'm sorry. Now can we talk about the contract? You're sorry because you need something from me. That's not an apology. For God's sake, Wren. Grant slammed a palm on the table. Do you understand what happens if you pull this contract? 1/4 of our workforce, gone, because of some petty revenge scheme. It's not revenge. It's a business decision. He was standing now, veins visible in his neck. You've been planning this for years, just waiting to destroy us. That's sick. I planned nothing, I said, keeping my voice level. I built a company. Your company chose to become dependent on mine. That's not my fault. You could have told us, Vivian interjected, voice climbing. When? I turned toward her. When you told me I didn't need an education because I'd find a husband eventually? When your sister told the whole family I was having a mental health crisis? She had no answer for that. I turned to my father. You want to know the worst part, Dad? I would have kept the contract running. I wasn't planning any of this. But then you stood in front of 240 people and told them I had no real career. You chose this. Not me. His jaw worked. For a moment, just a flicker, I thought I saw something like recognition cross his face. Then it was gone. What do you want? He asked flatly. Nothing you have to give me. There has to be something. You're not listening. I don't want anything from you. I never did. I just want you to know the truth. Fine. His voice went cold, the vulnerability gone, replaced by the same steel I'd known my whole life. If that's how you want to play this, you're done in this family. No inheritance. Nothing. I almost laughed. Dad, you cut me off at 22. What inheritance? I could make things difficult for you. I have lawyers. On what grounds? Every document is airtight. Every contract signed in good faith. There's nothing here to sue over, and we both know it. He glared. Don't be so sure. Actually, I am, because my attorney, who was also Grandma Constance's attorney, has already reviewed every possible angle. I let that land. You remember Priscilla Adeyemi? Grandma used her specifically because she knew you'd try something like this someday. Vivian gasped. Constance knew about all this? She left me a trust. $650,000, structured so you couldn't touch a cent of it. I set a photocopy of the trust document on the table. She knew exactly what kind of family she'd raised. That's why she protected me from it. My father's face went from red to white. She had no right. It was her money. She had every right. I stood. This meeting is over. Wren, we are not done here. Yes, we are. I've said everything I came to say. I walked toward the door, then paused. One more thing. If you contact me again, calls, texts, showing up at my office, I release every email, every record, every account of exactly how this family has treated me. All of it's documented. All of it's backed up. And all of it would make a fascinating story for the business press. I opened the door. My receptionist will show you out. I stood in the doorway and watched them gather themselves, 3 people who had spent my entire life making me feel small, now looking very small themselves. My father rose slowly, like a man suddenly aware of his own age. Vivian clutched her handbag like a shield. Grant stared at me with something new in his eyes, not contempt anymore, something closer to fear. This isn't over, Grant said. Yes, it is. I meant every word. I spent 13 years building a life you all told me I couldn't have. I did it without your help, without your approval, and I'll keep doing it without any of you in it. Vivian's lip trembled, the performance of motherly concern one last time. Wren, please. We're family. We share a last name, Vivian. That's all we've ever shared. I held the door wider. I'm not asking for an apology. I'm not asking for reconciliation. I'm setting a boundary. Don't contact me again. Don't mention me to your friends or your colleagues. Just let me go. My father stopped in front of me. For a moment we just looked at each other, father and daughter, strangers who happened to share a surname. You really hate us that much? He asked, barely above a whisper. No, Dad. I don't hate you. That's the part you don't understand. I met his eyes steadily. I just don't need you anymore. And that's something you're going to have to learn to live with. He had no response to that. They walked out through the lobby, past my employees who carefully pretended not to watch. The glass doors closed behind them. I went back to my desk, opened my laptop, and got back to work. Let me pause the story here again. If you're still with me, thank you, genuinely. This one wasn't easy to tell. If you think this is where it ends, it isn't. What I sent that Monday morning was meant to be a boundary, a way to protect my own peace and finally walk away. I didn't anticipate what it would eventually do to Ashford hospitality, or to my father's standing in that town, or to the family secrets that came pouring out once people finally started talking. If any of this has made you think about your own family, your own worth, your own boundaries, hit the like button, it genuinely helps. Subscribe if you haven't, turn on notifications, because the ending here is complicated, messy, and it taught me something about revenge I never expected to learn. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to walk away from family? Did it feel like freedom, or like grief, or both at once? I read every single comment on these stories, and they've made me feel a lot less alone in mine. 1 week after that meeting, I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, someone holding information that changed everything I thought I understood about why my family had treated me the way they had. The caller was my Uncle Desmond, my father's younger brother, always considered the family's black sheep, a marine photographer instead of a businessman, the one who'd never gone into hospitality. I hadn't seen him since my mother's funeral. Wren, his voice was older, rougher than I remembered. I heard about the Gala. And about Ashford's office. Small community, word travels fast. There's something you should know, he said. Something I should have told you years ago, but I was too much of a coward. I sat down slowly. I'm listening. When your father said the family couldn't fund both your program and Grant's tuition, that was a lie. There was money. There was a specific fund. Your mother set it up before she died, meant entirely for your education. Enough to cover a full graduate program anywhere in the country. My heart stopped. Harlan drained it. Used it for Grant's undergrad tuition, then told you there was nothing left. His voice cracked. Your mother wanted you to have choices, Wren. Harlan took them away from you. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of my desk. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I was afraid of your father. We all were. He exhaled. Constance found out. That's why she set up the trust for you. She couldn't get your mother's money back, but she made sure Harlan couldn't touch anything else. I thought of Grandma Constance's letter. I know what they did to you. She'd known all along. Why tell me now? I asked. Because it's time the truth came all the way out. 2 months after I terminated the contract, the consequences became public. I wasn't actively monitoring what happened to Ashford Hospitality, honestly, I was just trying to move forward, but in the Savannah business community, news travels fast, especially the bad kind. The company announced a workforce reduction across 3 properties, nearly a quarter of its staff, right before the holidays. The press release blamed market softening and strategic restructuring, but anyone paying attention knew the real story. Their biggest consulting partner had walked, and they hadn't been able to recover in time. Grant, barely 4 months into his new role as chief executive, was already fielding hard questions from the board. His vision for the company's future was collapsing under the weight of his father's own bridge burning. Harlan came out of retirement to help manage the fallout. The triumphant exit he'd planned, the legacy he thought he'd built, was quietly unraveling. And the real damage was to their reputation. Word spread. Not from me, I never said a word to anyone, but 240 people had watched my father humiliate his own daughter that night. When those same people later heard that the daughter was actually the reason his company had stayed afloat for 3 straight years, the whispers started on their own. Did you hear about Wren Ashford? Mocked his own daughter at his retirement party. Turns out she was the one keeping his whole portfolio profitable. Always thought there was something a little off about that family. In a town like Savannah, reputation is currency, and my father's was quietly going bankrupt. A former colleague told me that at a recent industry dinner, Harlan sat almost entirely alone. Nobody wanted to be seen too close to the man who'd publicly disowned the daughter who'd secretly been keeping his business alive. I didn't feel triumphant hearing any of it. I didn't feel satisfied either. Mostly I just felt tired. Grandma Constance had been right all along. Sometimes the truth really is punishment enough. I never had to do anything more than tell it. 6 months later, I sat in a therapist's office near the Battery, not because I was falling apart, but because I was finally ready to put myself back together on purpose. "You don't seem like someone who needs therapy," Dr. Alvarez said during our first session. "Everyone needs it," I told her. "I'm just finally willing to admit that out loud." We talked about my family, about years spent invisible, about the strange weight of building something remarkable in total silence, about the odd, complicated grief of finally cutting ties with people who were supposed to love you unconditionally and never quite managed it. "Do you regret any of it?" she asked once. "No," I said, and I meant it completely. I regret that it had to happen at all. I don't regret protecting myself. Outside of therapy, my life kept getting better. Harbor & Stone was thriving. We replaced the Ashford contract with 4 smaller, more diversified clients across 2 states, steadier, less exposed to any one family's dysfunction. Marcus got promoted to managing partner. I hired 6 new people that year. We moved into a bigger office with a full harbor view. I started having dinner with Uncle Desmond once a month. He told me real stories about my mother, not the sanitized versions my father had always fed me, stories about how fierce and stubborn she'd actually been, how she used to argue with hotel vendors twice her age and win. "You're just like her," Desmond told me once. "She'd be so proud of what you built." I still keep a photo of Grandma Constance on my desk. I visit her grave every couple of months, leave flowers, tell her about my life. It feels strange sometimes, talking to a headstone, but it also feels like healing. "I did it, Grandma," I told her one spring morning. I didn't let them decide who I was. The wind moved through the cemetery oaks, and if I listened closely enough, I could almost hear her answer. "I knew you would, sweetheart. I always knew." So here's what I actually learned from all of this, if you want the moral of the story. Your worth was never determined by a degree you didn't get to finish, or by your family's opinion of you, or by who chose to believe in you and who chose to tear you down instead. Your worth is determined by what you quietly build when nobody's watching, by who you decide to become when everyone around you has already counted you out, by the life you construct with your own 2 hands, on your own terms. My father thought he was teaching me some kind of lesson that night at the gala. He thought he was putting me firmly back in my place. What he actually did was finally set me free. I don't hate my family. That's the part people struggle to understand most. Hate takes energy, hate is its own kind of chain, and I'd rather spend my energy on people who've actually earned it, on work that means something to me, on a life that's genuinely mine. Boundaries were never about revenge. They're about protection. They're about saying, clearly and finally, this is where my life begins, and your damage ends. If you're in a family that's made you feel small, if you have people in your life who treat your potential like a threat instead of a gift, if you've ever been the scapegoat, the disappointment, the invisible one at your own family's table, I see you. I've been exactly where you are. And I promise you, there is an entire life waiting on the other side of finally walking away. Thank you for listening to my story, and for being here through all of it. If any part of this resonated with you, please subscribe, ring the notification bell, and check the description for more stories like this one. And remember, you are not what they said you were. You never were. You are so much more than that. Until next time, I'm Wren, and I'm finally free.